Hi, I'm Ashley Adamson, and today we're going to talk very practically. We're going to talk about some safety tips when you're dating as a trans woman, but I think you could also apply these to just being a trans person. Safety is super important. I think it just depends on who you're dating and what the context is. There's also some meta involved here in knowing yourself and your intuition. So I also want to speak to just mentioning that if you're into that kind of personal development and more of the deeper spiritual side of things, this is kind of like for you as well. So I've made a list here and we're going to go through it. So safety in dating. So the first thing is you want to avoid any dangerous situations completely by never even putting yourself in a dangerous situation. And the best way to do that is to have some kind of process for how you procure your dates and how you kind of like weed through the ones that are not going to be good for you. So for me, what I do is I kind of treat my dating process sort of like a marketing lead generating funnel where you put yourself out there, you allow a lot of matches to happen, and then I kind of put them into a space where I want to get to know them a little bit. I want to see who they are and get a sense of, is this person going to be chill to be around, safe to be around? Like, what's the kind of vibe that we have? Because, just in any dating context, you do want to see if you click, right? Like, how do you kind of, like, what are you kind of looking for when you're going through this dating process of seeing if you click or if you vibe? And what are some of the questions or flags that you look for when you're thinking about safety in this context? As you start talking, this is the first place where you're going to start to interact with them and get a little bit more knowledge about who they are. And this is a great place to kind of start looking for some flags. Some of the flags that I notice or look for is, what is the introduction of the conversation? Is it hey? And if it's hey, we're moving on. Unless they're like really cute, in which case they probably know this and I'm going to let them slide a little bit and I'll say hey back, but I'll try to generate some kind of conversation that's a little bit more like, can I get something from you to express that you have some kind of personality or something? If there's nothing to respond to in their profile and there's not much that I can say that can generate any kind of meaningful discussion, I probably won't continue the conversation because either A, they're boring, or B, they're not willing to invest any time into talking to me, which means C, they are not seeing value in who I am as a person, and they are probably talking to a bunch of other people that they're more interested in, and I'm kind of like more like a backup or something. So I don't want to talk to those people because I want to avoid wasting my time and also the emotional hurt that could come from that. Now, sometimes when I ignore people, they may follow up, and at that point, I will reconsider them depending on how they follow up. Sometimes people can follow up when you kind of just stop responding to them by being a little bit more aggressive, and that's obviously a much bigger flag to then not reply at all. But sometimes I get messages where they say, hey, like I'm on Grindr. Okay, I know most of you do not use Grindr because it's a fucking shit show, but I am there, and it's because I feel like my process is really solid for me to be able to kind of move people through it, and it's very easy for me. So I get hundreds of messages and I don't respond to most of them, but occasionally what I will do is someone will just say, hey, like, this is me, and they're really cute, they send me a hot picture, and I'll tell them flat out, I'll just say, no hookups, very bluntly, almost rude, right? This is kind of a way that I also test them, because if they respond to me rudely, then you're out of the game. But if they respond to me in a way that is actually like trying to be more understanding or trying to kind of express a larger conversation, then suddenly they're in the game. I've had people where I say no hookups and they say, oh, like, that's not what my intention was. I'm sorry it came across that way. I would like to get to know you, and here's a little bit about me. Like, I've had that happen, and that has turned into a date because there boom, like someone who is communicative, can understand, like, can respond to my bluntness and not be threatened by that. That's a huge thing, is to see if people are threatened by you or trying to coax you into something. That's a huge red flag. So those are kind of like some of the tips that I'd give you in the process of chatting and getting to know someone in the texting world. The next thing is, if you've chatted enough, I would maybe have a video call. I don't always do a video call, but sometimes I do a video call, just depending on my schedule, availability, and all of that. So I say, hey, would you be down to do a video call? If they say no, that's a flag right there. Not willing to invest less time in finding out if you're going to be valid or not. Excuse me, I need water. So I'm in my underwear. It's so hot here. Oh my God, Berlin, it's like, oh my God. Video chat. So in video chat, it can be like 10, 15 minutes. And if that's hard to schedule when they say yes, that's another flag, right? But if you get to the video chat, you don't have to talk about much. You just have to see, is there any chemistry? Is there any vibe? That's a great way of like cutting out the bad ones. And I can say that because I've also done this improperly, and I've gotten some bad ones before. I had a video chat with someone who I thought was attractive, seemed like an interesting guy. We didn't have a very good conversation on video chat, but I thought, well, he's attractive, so maybe I'll let this one slide, right? And we ended up going out for dinner, and when we met in person at the restaurant, he came in, he gave me a hug, and then I hugged him, and then he's like, oh, where's the kiss? And I was like, what? In my head, like, you're asking me to give you a kiss now? And he's like, come on. And I'm like, all right, no. And as this conversation and dinner progressed, I felt more and more unsafe through the aggressions that he expressed, to the point where I found out that this is not the first time someone has expressed this to him. And I literally felt like he would actually kill me or would do serious harm. So to get out of the situation, I just kind of let the dinner happen, didn't give him any of my personal details, and then called a Lyft and waited for that Lyft to pick me up from the restaurant. He offered to give me a ride home. Fuck no, you're not giving me a ride home. And my home was like literally 2 blocks away. But I didn't tell him that, and I just like hopped in Lyft and disappeared for all he knows. And I never saw him again, but thank God. That was like the worst experience. Like, I felt so unsafe inside my heart, like I wanted to run. That, I feel like I dodged a huge bullet there. And so that's kind of like a thing to kind of be thinking about with your process and your principles, is to really like not bend if you're to your principles, if you feel like your principles are pretty solid, and if you feel like you know yourself well enough to kind of read the signs. Okay, on to the spiritual things. Speaking of reading the signs, there is an intuitive aspect to interacting with people and interacting with time. What I mean by this is, you can get a sense of the future, and the closer the future is to you, or the more emotionally impactful the future is to you, the more you're going to be able to feel it. I had this date yesterday where I felt the disappointment before I showed up. I literally felt that disappointment as soon as he stopped responding to me when I was trying to coordinate with him on where we were actually going to show up while I'm on the train about to go there. And I thought, oh, like, am I going to show up to this date and he's just going to completely ghost me? That was the feeling that I was having. But ultimately, it was not that he ghosted me. It was that we never had a meaningful conversation, and that the whole thing was interrupted by another phone call. And it just kind of seemed like a huge waste of my time. And I was very disappointed. And as soon as I fell into that disappointment, I said, like my intuition was saying these things, and I just wasn't sure where it was going to be, but here's that moment. Now, I talk about that in my being single video, which I think is 2 episodes ago, and it turned out well, because I then expressed my disappointment and was able to recover, but I still felt that deep, deep disappointment. And the reason why I call this out, because if you're an intuitive person and you are in touch with knowing yourself and in touch with connecting with yourself and listening to your intuition, which is super important, you can actually get a sense for danger before it even happens. You can get a sense for, does this person feel right or does something feel off? And if you have that feeling at any point in text discussion, even if just looking at their photo, sometimes I look at a photo and I go, no, even if he's attractive. That's going to save you so many times. And believe me, it works. Not even just in safety. Like, I have been able to look at pictures and be able to like pull out of my intuition what their career field is. I kid you not. I can look at some people's pictures and say, that person's in science, that person's in this, that person's in that. And they've been able to confirm it to me, which is crazy. So there is an intuitive side, just how much you kind of like have a connection to this. Now, on this connection, I'll say one more thing in case you're like, oh, like intuition, like I don't really understand it. There's many ways that your intuition can speak to you. There's 3 main ways. There's this visual way where you may get a visual. There is an emotional way where you might get an emotional feeling. And then there's like a feeling way where you'll just feel something. The emotional is kind of more of a feeling. Sorry. The third one is like you may actually have a physical reaction in some kind of way. And oftentimes intuition communicates across multiple of these streams, visual, emotional, feeling, and physical, and can kind of like, depending on how you're calibrated, can communicate across one of these streams a little bit more than another. I should probably give a video that goes more in depth into intuition, but the skinny of it, because this is super, super important, and I kid you not, it will save you many times, not just in dating, but just like in making mistakes or saying the right thing, is being able to listen to it. And for me, the biggest thing has been learning to let my heart be empty, to clear my heart of all the clutter and to just let it be empty, so that way it can be a receiver of information of someone else's heart. How's their heart doing? Is their heart closed? Is their heart angry? Like, what's going on with them? You can start to receive that information if your heart's clear. But if your heart is full of all your jumble mix, like if your room's full, like my room has all this stuff, if my room is empty, I think when someone would be into it, stand into it, or when I put an object into it, it stands out more. That's what I'm trying to get at. Okay, very tangible, simple things. Be very clear in your boundaries. If someone is saying things that's crossing your boundaries, they're also testing you to see if you can define your boundaries. If you cannot, then they may be wanting to say, oh, well, like this means I can manipulate this person. And they may not even be conscious about it. So you need to also be very clear with holding your boundaries and respecting your boundaries and having enough self-respect that you can convey this. That's going to help you, especially in the long run, because some first dates are going to go well, and the second date and the third date and the fourth date, but eventually over time, some negative aspect of someone's manipulative personality can start to emerge, and you can start to find yourself deep into a relationship where you've made excuses for them to get you into a place that's not a very good place to be. So safety in dating is also not just safety on the first date, it's safety in the long term. You have to think about your self-worth, your self-respect, and your boundaries, and you have to be able to assert them and understand who you are. Does that make sense? Like, do you know what I'm talking about? Have you seen those people that have like gotten into really toxic relationships and then don't know how to get out of it? Have you ever made excuses for other people and like said, oh, like that's okay that they do it this way? And yes, sometimes it is okay. Like, be understanding, but also be not understanding. Know where to draw your lines and just say, no, that's not for me. In the actual date, I'd say look for, like, see how your heart's feeling. Is your heart feeling closed? Is it feeling safe? Is it just feeling neutral? That's fine. If your heart starts to feel like, oh, like I don't feel comfortable here, that's a huge, huge red flag. Behavior flags as well. If there's any kind of, like, do they start talking about negative things? If they start talking about negative things, those are people you probably just don't want to have in your life. So just, like, throw them out. Are they able to listen to you? This is a big one, because if you're going to get into arguments later on, they have to demonstrate the ability to listen. Because if they can't listen, then you're just going to get in arguments where you're just yelling at each other. So from an emotional safety perspective, you just want to avoid people that can't listen or who just want to talk over you. Don't make excuses for them. And I think the last one is, are they inquisitive? I think this is a personal preference, but I think you should have someone who is inquisitive, that is curious about you or curious about the world, because that means they're going to continue to be open-minded and want to learn things. Want to learn things about you, want to learn things about the relationship that you may eventually arrive in, want to learn things that's going to help discussion and growth and progression. Now, really tangible things that are really simple for safety, having pepper spray on you. Having pepper spray that you may never need to use is nice to have on you, because it means that you have some form of security to fall back on. Now, if you're ever in danger, the first thing is not to go for your pepper spray. The first thing is to run and to scream and to make a scene, to like really turn it into something where it becomes hard for the perpetrator to attack you or to do this without someone else noticing. With pepper spray, when you get it, you should also practice using it, and make sure you don't spray yourself, but practice using it. Don't be downwind. Like, if don't spray it and then the wind will blow into your face, don't do that. Like, be aware of like how the wind works and shoot it a couple times, and do a little target practice so you have an idea of what it's like to actually shoot the thing, and also see how it works. Because if the first time you're ever using your pepper spray is when you're in trouble, like, you're already in trouble. Like, you need to have that. I don't have pepper spray. What I do carry, though, is I do carry a little injection needle that I have from injecting estrogen, and I have that in case I ever need to threaten someone. I'll say, you don't know what's in this. Like, this is, you know, like, I could have HIV or something. Like, do you want to fuck with this? You know, like, this crazy bitch has got a needle. Like, I don't know what the fuck she's doing, but because she has a needle, that's fucking intense. I'm out of here. And I've heard some women suggest this as a tip, and I've adopted it and taken it, but I've never needed to use it. Another thing is just like physical self-defense, like kung fu, martial arts. Like, I'm very big into kung fu, but I'm not into like actual physical, like fighting kung fu. But I at least know a few body parts. Like, kicking them in the nuts is definitely a good one. But also, like, punching them in the throat right here is also a really good place. I'm a fighter, so I'm not afraid of like asserting that. But I hope it never comes to that. Meet them in a public space. See how they react with, like, should we recap now that we just covered a lot? Look for, like, have a process of procuring. Look for signals. Do a video chat. Meet in public spaces. Learn how to hold yourself well. Assert your boundaries. See if they're able to listen to you. Listen to your intuition, and show that you have self-worth. That's super important. And then safety in the long term, watch for behavior flags that may be not so good. Are they able to listen? That's kind of like in the last one. And are they inquisitive? I think that's a really good one. So thanks for joining me on some dating single tips. There's some meta involved in there. And if you like that kind of stuff, that's what we talk about. Thanks for joining me today. If you'd like to support, thank you. I have a Patreon, and I really appreciate it. You can buy me a cup of tea, or you can join my live Q&A or meditation sessions. I'll see you next episode. Bye.